Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Kaitou Joker. Okay, so this episode is a continuation of the two-parter we got last time, and does kind of continue the whole Professor Clover plotline that's going on, but throughout the past two seasons, it's continuing. But in case, this episode is interesting in that, well, long story short, there's a country that just has a giant, massive weapon called the Light of Ragnarok, which is what the episode is named after, and I'll explain what it is in the review. But it is a very interesting weapon, and that's why the blue star actually winds up getting stolen. So first things first, the episode opens up with Silverheart's house being destroyed by the general guy, who we finally find out his name is General Basil, and he is after the blue star, and after his ground forces actually wind up retrieving it, they then proceed to retreat, and Joker, Hachi, and Roko are actually in the Road Joker, and they see all of this despite not being able to catch up to them, and Joker proceeds to wonder who they are and what their business is. At which point Hachi asks if they are able to be some of the Air Joker and chase after him, but Joker merely points out that they have no time, and instead proceeds to drive off the cliff where the airship is actually leaving, and uses the eject button so they can just kind of leap up to the ship and latch onto it, and it only barely works. Roko's able to grab on, and then Joker and Hachi grab onto Roko, but yeah, they're able to successfully infiltrate the airship. Meanwhile, Queen, Spade, and Dark Eye are actually looking for Silver Eye to make sure he's all right, and they can't find him at first, and assume that he perished in the destruction. But then he shows up with Queen's sword tucked under his arm, and he has no idea his house is destroyed. He just walks in. He's like, "Hi, I'm here," and then his house just collapses, and he has no idea what's going on. And then as we later find out, The reason wasn't in the house is actually because he did go to fix Queen's sword. Yeah, so in the last episode he was the one who broke it, and he went to go fix it, and as it turns out that saved his ass, because he wasn't in the house when it blew up. So yeah, he wound up getting himself out just in the right time. But in any case, after Queen gives him a very big scolding, pointing out that he shouldn't have gone off and gone to fix her sword without her permission or knowledge, Spade then proceeds to ask him everything he knows about the blue star, and he merely explains that the blue star is a treasure that he stole from the Saffron Kingdom 40 years ago. And get ready, because there's a lot of food puns in this one, but in any case, it then cuts to a scene of General Basil, who is talking with Princess Paprika, who is the princess and heir apparent of the Saffron Kingdom. She's actually too young to rule because she's just very young, and we do kind of find out what's going on a little bit between the two of them, and Basil just kind of explains how he has the blue star, and with the red sun that's currently around the princess's neck, he'll be able to activate the Light of Ragnarok, and she is ultimately very confused and concerned about that, pointing out that her inner will, her father said never to activate it. He said to just leave it dormant and never touch it, just leave it alone. But Basil insists that he should, since obviously according to himself, times have changed, and he feels like that is the only way that his country is going to be able to preserve peace. And also points out that he's basically in charge, since she's too young to rule, and points out that she's just, in his own words, window dressing. But she becomes visibly annoyed with him, and also points out why he's acting like that, and points out that he seems to be acting like a different person than he was, which is interesting, and I will get into that. But he merely insists and pulls out his gun, which again I should mention is an interesting note as well. But it's more obvious if you're actually watching these things. But yeah, he then proceeds to pull out his gun and demands that she gives him the red sun. Meanwhile, Joker, Hachi, and Roko have been watching all of this from the skylight, and And Hachi and Roko are obviously very annoyed and point out that they can't stand by and let anything bad happen. But Joker is less enthused. He literally just wants the treasure and that's it. And he's just visibly annoyed as well. But not to the extent where he's like, hey, I don't really. He doesn't want anything to do with this, as you mentioned. He doesn't want to just kind of stop a war of any sort of kind. But in any case, they then kind of shove him and force him to jump into action, which causes them to fall through the skylight. And sure enough, this causes Basil to actually panic because he has no idea why they were there, but he just turns his gun on them. But Roko shatters it with his sonic scream, and and then they scoop up the princess and run out of the palace, which causes the whole country to go on high alert. And they have to get her somewhere safe to actually kind of get away from them. He merely explain, and obviously there is a scene where Princess Paprika actually winds up questioning who her newfound allies are, and Joker just kind of outright tells her that he's a phantom thief, which obviously she doesn't fully understand what a phantom thief is. She's just convinced that he's there to steal something, and to be fair, he's there to steal the blue star on behalf of his master, but she merely points out that, but obviously he points out that there's a very big difference between being a burglar and being a phantom thief. Being that in the case of a phantom thief, you declare your crimes up front, and whereas a burglar just kind of breaks in, steals something, and doesn't tell anybody that they're there. Literally same. I mean, it's a minor difference, but the difference being is that if they know you're coming, then they're going to do everything in their power to try and stop you. And if they can't, then it's on them for their stuff getting stolen. That's the main difference between a phantom thief and a regular burglar. But in any case, the two of them then proceed to go back and forth and argue about it a bit. And eventually they decide to break it off. When they find out Princess Paprika is actually hungry, so they decide to break for lunch. And we do find out this later, but Princess Paprika actually knows a chef who we find out later actually worked in the palace, and is more than happy to offer up her new friends up some kebabs, which are a local delicacy. And obviously the three boys take one bite into it and are very happy about the fact that they found something so delicious. At which point the chef offers them a glass of pomegranate juice each, which he proclaims helps enhance the flavor, and he's very right, and they're very moved by it as well. And Joker even declares that it is one of the best things he's ever drank, and asks for a full can, and kind of asks for more of it, and the guy kind of just obliges. He just gives them what they want. While Princess Paprika actually watches from her room upstairs. At which point the man comes up and proceeds to give her a kebab and a glass of pomegranate juice as well. And it's revealed that he actually does know who she is, and he in turn they just know each other. They're established to have a long-standing history. And yeah, it's explained in this episode that he used to work at the royal palace, and she's very happy about the fact that he's still willing to help her even after all this time. And as she bites into the kebab, she starts crying because she remembers it very fondly as the time she went there with her mom and dad about how we used to work at the palace, and points out that she's very happy. She's very happy, and that there's a certain happiness that goes without saying, and she's just kind of remembering all those nostalgic times, and starts to bring up about how her country used to be locked in a war at some point, but they kind of sorted all of that out, and now they get to kind of live in peace, and live in a peaceful world where nobody really has to fight or worry for anything, which does make her happy. And meanwhile, Joker has since come up to the room and is kind of actually just hears all of this from the outside the door, and he's very moved by it. At which point the chef actually winds up walking out to excuse her so she could kind of grieve and let out her feelings a little bit. And he actually winds up running into Joker and just pardons himself. And Joker is questioning about whether or not he should go in, but then it's revealed that he kind of doesn't really have much of a choice because at that exact moment, a cat latches onto his ankle, and he immediately runs in and panics and tells her to get it off. And she does. But she doesn't fully understand what. But she's initially very confused as to why she's barging into her room without asking. And he merely just tells her to get the cat as far away from him as possible. And sure enough, he agrees. She agrees to do that, but she also notes that it's very funny that he's afraid of cats, which he points out isn't very funny at all. In any case, after this moment, we actually get two different scenes that explain what the Light of Ragnarok actually is. We see one with General Basil actually talking with one of his underlings, which is revealed later who that is. But for the time being, he's just this nondescript person that we know. But he then proceeds to explain how the Light of Ragnarok is this powerful weapon that is able to wipe a country off the face of the earth, and in that regard is very dangerous, and the reason he needs both the blue star and the red sun is because the two crystals together, when combined, provide a password that he'll be able to use to activate it. So for that reason he needs both of them. Meanwhile, Princess Paprika actually begins to explain to Joker that it's a lot more powerful than Basil thinks it is. As we find out, the weapon in question is not just capable of just wiping a country off the face of the earth. It is so powerful that its effective range is like 95% of the earth. So for that reason, yeah, the old king, he kind of separated the two for that specific reason, and then Silverheart kind of separated it perfectly by splitting up the two so that they weren't able to actually get a hold of either of them, which obviously did not work. But in case that he actually explains how they need to actually keep the two crystals separate at all costs. The guards are actually start storming the city and start doing housewide searches to try and find the princess and get the crystal and get the red sun back. Which obviously means that it's time for them to go, and sure enough, the chef comes up and tells them that why they need to leave, and she thanks him for his time, and the group of them actually wind up leaving through the back alleys. And they are actually cornered by some guards at one point, but but Joker uses his image gum to give them the slip, and they just wind up seeing image gum dummies that blow up in their face. But in case they then eventually manage to get their way to an old ruin, which they decide to camp out in for the night, and they decide that this is probably far enough to get her as far away from the city as possible. At which point, Princess Paprika, realizing that she can actually use Joker to actually maybe maintain the peace, then comes up to him and offers him a proposal, which is she wants him to steal the Red Sun. And he's initially very confused about that, pointing out that obviously he doesn't really want to kind of steal things for the greater good of people, which Joker's not a very likable protagonist. We kind of established this over and over, but he's not exactly the most likable guy. But she then points out that obviously he needs to steal the red sun from her, pointing out that the only way he's going to be able to the only way they're going to be able to deactivate the Light of Ragnarok is by ironically enough putting the password into the system so they can activate the self-destruct. Because that is the only way to do it. The console itself does not physically work unless you put in the password. So it's not just the fact that it'll destroy everything if the password's put in. Literally, you need the password to do anything with it. So for that reason, but in any case, Joker is still initially very reluctant on doing that, but eventually he decides to cave on the grounds that she does him a favor, and we don't find out what that favor is until much later. But it's more than enough for her to agree to his terms, and the three of them they proceed to actually infiltrate the palace. And sure enough, they actually wind up trying to run across the roof of the palace, but Basil actually winds up seeing them and starts opening fire on them from the control room. So he just starts firing on the palace, which sounds dangerous, and it very much is. He very much could hurt himself and somebody else, but more specifically himself, because he's firing on himself. is bad canon design. I'll be perfectly honest. That's something Courage the Cowardly. Actually, that is something Courage the Cowardly Dog did. That is very much a thing that they did, where they just blew up the base by accident because they were able to aim at themselves. And yeah, that's very much a thing Courage the Cowardly Dog did. It's a very funny episode, but that's not the point. But in any case. They then managed to get inside the palace. But in any case, they then managed to eventually get inside the palace and begin to start looking for the way to the control room. But it's at this point where they're actually confronted by our old pal Shadow Joker, who is revealed to have been the soldier in disguise that Basil was talking to, and declares that he's not going to let them pass and proceeds to get into a fight with them. And Joker merely points up, and Joker merely demands to know what his problem is with him and why he keeps fighting him. And he merely points out that Joker shouldn't underestimate him and knows perfectly well why he's not happy with him. And in the process reveals that Joker's first name and that he knows his first name is Jack, which causes Joker to actually falter a little bit, and he's not entirely sure what's going on. But in any case, it's at this point where Spade and Queen actually wind up showing up and decide to help Joker by facing off against Shadow Joker, pointing out that they have a score to settle with him and that they're more than happy to fight on his behalf, which does enable Joker to actually enable Joker and the rest of his group to actually go and continue onward with their little expedition to get into the control room. And sure enough, they continue onward with that, but yeah, they then proceed to actually keep going, and eventually they run into some soldiers, and Rocco uses his sonic scream to break their gun and then scare them off with the fact that he's a talking dog, and then proceeds to chase them through the hallway, which is really funny. But in any case, with that, they can continue further into the palace, and eventually do make it to the roof of the control room, where Joker, Hachi, and Paprika are actually confronted by Basil, who merely tells them that it's admirable they came this far, but he has no intention of actually killing them, and that if he vows his life to actually leave the Red Sun behind. But Joker merely declares that he's not in any real mood to negotiate, and pulls out one of his cards, But Basil merely tells him to not underestimate him, and especially since one of them is a phantom thief and the other one is a trained soldier, he points out. But Joker obviously doesn't listen and goes running in for a confrontation. At which point he's shot with a ballistic knife and seemingly dies. Which of course causes Hachi and Paprika to kind of sob uncontrollably as Joker kind of bleeds out all over the dome. And Sure enough, Basil actually winds up gloating his victory and snatches the red sun from his hand and for good measure proceeds to kidnap Hachi and Paprika so they can witness like his final victory. But unbeknown to him, Paprika actually winds up swiping one of his cards and actually tucks it into her pocket. Meanwhile, we actually do see the fight between we do actually see the fight between Spade, Queen, and Shadow Joker, they're kind of combining their techniques to actually kind of trap him. He keeps using his bloody ring to try and fight back against him, while they combine Spade's freeze gun with Queen cutting up all the tapestries to just kind of make several walls that he's not able to get through, and eventually they do manage to corner him. But he actually does manage to actually defeat him with his one last like super technique, and manages to actually kind of defeat them and vanish into a puff of smoke. So they're unable to actually kind of conclusively get a hold of him. Meanwhile, as we find out, Rocco is actually continuing to chase the guards through the hallways, and he does eventually manage to scare them off. But then Rocco hears something and opens up one of the closets and discovers a man inside, and we don't find out who that man is till later. But in any case with that, Hachi and Paprika then begin to bawl, with Hachi more or less bawling over the fact that Joker is seemingly dead, whereas Paprika silently tries to cut her way out of her ropes with one of Joker's cards, while General Basil just kind of prepares for doomsday. Basically, he just pulls out the two crystals that he has and places them in the machine, and and obviously Paprika decides to ask him why he even needs the weapon in the first place, but he merely tells her that he needs it to preserve peace, as he so claims, but he merely points out that it will bolster the military might of the nation by quite a bit, and if they have it, they can easily stop any war before it starts. So, and with that, he then proceeds to at long last activate the machine and get the password, seemingly. And it's at this point where Paprika eventually cuts herself free with Joker's card and proceeds to make a move and gets in front of him, pointing out that she's not going to let him destroy her piece. That goes without saying, but he merely points out that she's just window dressing and that she obviously should just let things go and let everything take its course. But obviously she isn't too keen on doing that, pointing out that she is a human being with worlds of peace, and that she's more than willing to sacrifice herself for the sake of that peace. But at which point General Basil pushes her aside and activates the machine, which enables him to finally get the password, which is revealed to be 11711. So with that newfound knowledge, he then proceeds to punch it into the machine, and it does nothing. And which kind of confuses him a little bit, since that should have been the correct password. At which point Joker actually winds up walking in completely fine and proceeds to explain how his trick and how it actually worked. With a little help from Silverheart, who does his information corner, and he's apparently in timeout because he went off and fixed the Queen's sword without telling her. But in case she walks in. But in case with that, we then find out what Joker actually did, which is that he only got the password from the Blue Star. He didn't actually get the password from the Red Sun because, as Joker points out, as he explains, there was a thermos like pomegranate juice from earlier that he got from earlier in his pocket, and sure enough, a ballistic knife hit that instead of him, and because of that, all the pomegranate juice just kind of leaked out all over the top of the clear dome, which obviously kind of sort of semi prevented the password from being read, because it, as Silverheart comes in and explains, the pomegranate juice because the pomegranate juice dyed the glass red. As he explains it, it's like sticking a piece of red. What is it? It's like sticking a red sheet of plastic over like one of those code things, and when you do that, only the things that aren't red are visible. He explains that it's kind of like that, but in reverse. It's basically Joker just kind of used the pomegranate juice to kind of cover up the red part of the letters, and proceeds to smash open. And once they've actually dealt with General Basil, proceeds to smash open the dome to reveal what the password actually is. Which, ironically enough, for this big scary weapon that could wipe out 95% of the world, the password itself is peace, which is a very wholesome thing. And of course, General Basil is very confused, pointing out that he's a little confused as to why the weapons designation would be peace, but sure enough, Joker points out that obviously the king never wanted to use the weapon in the first place, which is why he made the password peace. Which is supposed to be ironic. It's supposed to be this thing where it's like, yeah, this kind, peaceful king made this super awesome weapon that would destroy everything, but he has no intention of using it, so he made the password peace. It is a very kind of wholesome thing. But in case with that, Joker then proceeds to put the actual password in and shuts the whole machine down and causes it to blow up. And sure enough, he explains, and sure enough, as the light of Ragnarok explodes in space, he then proceeds to explain that now that they've dealt with it, the machine obviously is now going to show the newfound peace raining down upon their country, and explains that this is now the end for him. At which point, General Basil declares that he's not going to be defeated so easily, and proceeds to summon several guards, and is genuinely confused when they all turn on him. Which has revealed is actually Joker's doing as well. He planted a bug on Hachi at some point, and proceeds to explain how they heard General Basil's contempt for his country and about how he doesn't feel like they would be able to actually fight back, and obviously they also heard Princess Paprika standing up for them, and which caused them to change sides and actually decide to take down General Basil. At which point, Rocco and the rest of the Phantom Thieves actually walk in and reveal who they actually found, and who they actually found is General Basil. As it turns out, the man we thought was General Basil was actually an imposter the whole time, and sure enough, the imposter Basil actually does proceed to smile and declares that he has no more use for this country. At which point, his airship kind of just plows through the top of the palace, and he grabs a ladder and reveals himself to be Professor Clover. And I should mention it was implied that it was Professor Clover the whole time. Obviously, I pointed out his gun, which is the Professor Clover stun gun, and obviously Professor Clover's the only one who has one of those, so of course it's him. But then also the fact that that Paprika even pointed out that he's been acting like a different person this whole time, which is also noteworthy. And then also the fact that they seemingly had the same voice actor. That was a pretty big red flag as well. But in case declaring that he has now completed his objective, he then proceeds to leave in General Basil's ship, which is just revealed to be Professor Clover's ship with a disguise on it, and with that he then flies off. But in case with Professor Clover having been chased out of the country, General Basil, the real one, actually, and Princess Paprika then thank Joker for actually saving the country, and he says no problem, and that it was no big deal, and that next time he may actually help and actually steal steal the Red Sun as well. At which point it's revealed that he at some point replaced the Blue Star with an image gun piece, and obviously Princess Paprika is very confused what's going on. But in case he then proceeds to leave on Spade's ship, because Spade is the only one who actually managed to bring one with him. Obviously, Joker, Hachi, and Rocco, they just kind of jumped onto Professor Clover's ship and followed him. So obviously Spade's the only, and obviously Queen tagged along with Spade, so Spade's the only one who has his ship currently. But in case after Joker leaves, Princess Paprika then thanks Joker under her breath, and hopes that she'll actually meet him again. At which point he gets on his airship, and he gets on Spade's airship, and they proceed to fly off. And Hachi is just very impressed about the fact that Joker was able to not only save the world but avenge their master at the same time as well. And Joker just points out that that's just the way he is, at which point he actually winds up dropping a piece of paper, and then we find out what that little motive that he was given was. As it turns out, Princess Paprika gave him, basically she gave him an executive pass to eat as many kebabs as he wants. So, yeah, he's allowed to just show up in her country whenever, eat as many kebabs until he gets his fill, and then just leave. So, yeah, that's the arrangement they have now, and obviously everybody else just kind of shares a laugh, pointing out how much of a glutton he is, and about how how obviously they don't even think he could eat that many in the first place. But they then proceed to laugh and then go off to Silverheart's cabin to tell him the good news. At which point we find out that Professor Clover, as it turns out, wanted the light of Ragnarok to blow up. He was never intending to actually set it off as a weapon, because as it turns out, the light of Ragnarok's power source was actually another one of those magic orbs that he needs for his plans. So yeah, as it turns out, he was going to blow it up regardless, so he could steal the power source. But yeah, this episode just kind of ends on that little note. The heroes didn't actually save the day. They just kind of helped Professor Clover with whatever it was he was doing. So yeah, so there's a couple of interesting implications with this one. Namely, that Shadow Joker seems to know Joker, even though Joker doesn't recognize him at all, which is kind of interesting. And then also the fact that the heroes, despite doing the right thing and destroying this massive super weapon, they wind up helping Professor Clover in the process. So yeah, they kind of lost that one. They didn't really win that one at all. But yeah, in any case, yeah, the Joker just kind of lost in this episode. They managed to help Professor Clover without realizing it, and now Professor Clover has 2 of the 3 magic orbs he needs to complete his plan. So yeah, we're going to be seeing how that plays out in the next episode, or whatever episode comes after that gets addressed at some point. But in any case, yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks and a right way of saying thanks. So be sure to check those out. Link is down in the description. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent one. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new, or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, And so next time, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!